Do me a favor real quick. Look down at your feet. Whatever's on them right now, sneakers, boots, flip-flops, doesn't matter. Take them off for a second. Feel the floor. Now imagine that's every surface you'll ever walk on for the rest of your life. Gravel, frozen ground, broken glass, the gas station bathroom floor. That's the world without shoes. And here's the wild part. For about 99% of human history, that was just life. Every hunt, every migration, every single step on bare skin. So when did we finally say, okay, enough of this, and put something on our feet? That answer is way older and way stranger than you'd expect. Let's start with a problem. Shoes rot. Leather falls apart. Plant fibers just dissolve. Unlike stone tools that can sit underground for 2 million years looking basically the same, the earliest shoes are gone. Completely gone. So we can't point to the first shoe. But here's the thing. We can find what shoes did to the people wearing them. Back in 2005, a physical anthropologist named Eric Trinkhaus was studying ancient foot bones from sites across Eurasia, and he noticed something strange. Humans from 100,000 to 40,000 years ago had thick, strong toe bones, the kind you'd build from constantly gripping the ground with every step. But humans from around 40,000 to 26,000 years ago, their toe bones were noticeably thinner and weaker. Their leg bones were still strong. Their legs were still doing heavy work, but the toes weren't. Here's why that matters. When you walk barefoot, your toes are working constantly, pushing off the ground, gripping uneven terrain. That stress builds thick bones over a lifetime. But if something rigid is between your foot and the ground, your toes stop doing that. They get weaker. Trinkhaus compared barefoot populations to communities known for wearing heavy footwear, like the Inuit. Same pattern every time. His conclusion? Humans were regularly wearing some form of supportive footwear by at least 40,000 years ago. That's not the Bronze Age. That's the middle of the Ice Age. People were covering their feet before they painted the caves at Lascaux, before they carved the first Venus figurines, before anyone crossed into the Americas. The shoe might be the oldest technology we have, and we know it not because we found one, but because of what it did to the foot. Okay, so the oldest shoes we can actually hold, they were found in a cave in Oregon. In 1938, archaeologist Luther Cressman was digging at Fort Rock Cave in the Oregon High Desert when he pulled out dozens of woven sandals buried under a thick layer of volcanic ash. That ash came from the Mount Mazama eruption, the same one that created Crater Lake about 7,600 years ago. The sandals were underneath it. Radiocarbon dating put them at roughly 9,000 to 10,500 years old. They're made from shredded sagebrush bark, twisted and woven into flat soles with a covered toe flap. Not fancy, but not simple either. The weaving technique required real skill and planning. Somebody sat down 10,000 years ago, stripped bark off a bush, and made a shoe. And it survived under a volcanic eruption for 100 centuries. That's pretty incredible. Now, while the Oregon sandals were being made in a dry desert climate, people in colder places were solving the same problem very differently. In 2008, archaeologists excavating a cave in Armenia found a shoe stuffed under an overturned ceramic bowl. One single shoe, made from a single piece of cowhide, shaped to fit a right foot, laced through hand-cut eyelets, and packed with grass for insulation. Radiocarbon dating? About 5,500 years old, the oldest leather shoe ever found. And here's the detail that gets me. This wasn't just leather folded in half. It was cut to a specific shape, fitted. The lacing system was functional. The grass stuffing probably kept its form when not being worn. This is real shoemaking. This is craftsmanship. The design was so similar to shoes worn centuries later in Ireland and the Balkans that researchers basically concluded this style persisted, essentially unchanged, across thousands of years and thousands of miles. Same shoe, different centuries, different continents. But if you want to see prehistoric shoe technology at its absolute peak, you need to meet a man they found melting out of a glacier in the Alps in 1991. He's about 5,300 years old. His name is Ötzi, and his shoes were masterpieces. The outer sole, brown bear hide, chosen for durability and grip. The upper, deer hide, softer, more flexible. Inside, a netting of tree bark fibers packed with hay to insulate his feet in freezing temperatures. The lacing, strips of cowhide, and underneath the sole, extra cowhide strips attached for traction on ice and rock. 5 different materials, at least 3 construction techniques, all assembled into one functional boot designed for high-altitude alpine conditions. Researchers built replicas and actually tested them in the Alps. No blisters, warm and dry at temperatures around -5 to -10 Celsius. A boot designed by someone who never saw a written word outperformed most modern hiking gear. Think about that the next time you spend $200 on trail shoes. Now here's where things get interesting. For tens of thousands of years, shoes were about survival, protection, pure function. And then, around 3000 BC, they became something else entirely. They became power. In ancient Egypt, most people went barefoot. Sandals existed, but they were a status symbol, not everyday wear. When archaeologists opened Tutankhamun's tomb, they found 80 pairs of sandals. 80. Some were simple papyrus. Some were elaborate leather with painted designs. And on the mummy's feet, sandals made of solid gold. Never meant to be walked in. Made for eternity. And some of his sandals had images of enemies painted on the soles, bound captives face up, so that with every step, the pharaoh symbolically crushed the people he'd conquered. That's not footwear. That's a political statement you wear. The Romans took shoes in a completely different direction. Pure function, military efficiency. The caliga was the standard boot of a Roman legionary. Open lattice design, cut from a single piece of leather, with a thick sole studded with over 100 iron hobnails. The open design prevented blisters on long marches. The hobnails gave grip on mud, stone, and grass. And also, if you kicked someone, you were kicking them with iron. At Vindolanda, a Roman fort on Hadrian's Wall in northern England, archaeologists have pulled out nearly 5,000 shoes from the waterlogged soil. Baby booties, women's slippers with decorative cutwork, military boots, bath clogs. Before those shoes were found, historians assumed frontier forts were populated entirely by soldiers. The shoes proved that women and children lived there too. A baby shoe, 2,000 years old, told us something centuries of Roman military documents hadn't. Now jump forward to 14th century Europe, because at some point, wealthy Europeans decided the way to show off was to wear shoes with toes so long they literally couldn't walk properly. The poulain, pointed toe shoes that extended up to 2 feet beyond the wearer's actual foot. The longer the point, the higher your status. Some were so extreme they had to be attached to the wearer's knees with silver chains just to keep the tips from flopping around. You couldn't work in these. You couldn't run. You couldn't really do anything physical, which was exactly the point. And researchers examining medieval skeletons found that bunions, the kind caused by these shoes, jumped from 6% of the population to 27% during the Poulain era. Among wealthy individuals buried at high-status sites, 43%. Medieval fashion was literally deforming people's feet and knocking them over. Okay, last thing, because this part matters. Before the 1800s, there was no such thing as a left shoe and a right shoe. Shoes were made on straight, symmetrical forms, identical for both feet. You soaked them in water and wore them until the leather conformed to whichever foot you used it on. That was standard practice for over 250 years. The shoe is at least 40,000 years old. Left and right shoes have existed for roughly 170. For almost the entire history of the shoe, people just dealt with it. And then in 1883, a man named Jan Ernst Matzeliger, born in Suriname, working in a shoe factory in Lynn, Massachusetts, patented a machine that automated the most complex step in shoemaking, a machine that could produce up to 700 pairs a day versus the 50 a skilled craftsman could manage by hand. He died at 36, never saw the full impact of what he built. But his machine did to shoes what the printing press did to books. It made them cheap enough for everyone. Today, the world produces about 24 billion pairs of shoes a year, more than 3 pairs for every person on Earth. And the man who made that possible, most people have never heard his name. So next time you lace up your sneakers or kick them off and feel the floor, just remember, that moment of, I need something on my feet, Somebody had that same thought 40,000 years ago, in the middle of an ice age, standing on frozen ground, and everything since then has just been the follow-up.